The morning sun cast long shadows across the Naval Amphibious Base Coronado as Maya Rodriguez stepped out of the government sedan. The salty Pacific breeze whipped through her dark hair as she clutched a manila folder containing her temporary assignment orders. At 28, she had already made a name for herself as one of the Navy's most skilled marksmanship instructors, but nothing in her career had prepared her for what awaited behind the chain-link fences of the Naval Special Warfare Command. The driver, a gruff petty officer with weathered hands, glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "You sure you got the right place, ma'am? This ain't exactly where they usually send the regular Navy folks." Maya checked her orders again, reading the address that had been burned into her memory since receiving the call 3 days earlier. "I'm sure. Building 164, Naval Special Warfare Training Facility." As the sedan pulled away, leaving her standing alone with her duffel bag and equipment case, Maya felt the weight of curious stares from passing personnel. The base buzzed with activity even at this early hour. Men in olive-drab uniforms jogged past in perfect formation, their boots striking the asphalt in synchronized rhythm. Others emerged from various buildings carrying gear she couldn't identify, moving with the purposeful efficiency that marked elite military units. The sight that caught her attention most, however, was the shooting range visible in the distance. Even from hundreds of yards away, she could hear the sharp crack of rifle fire echoing across the compound. It was a sound that had been the soundtrack of her life for the past decade, ever since she first picked up a rifle at her grandfather's farm in rural Texas. Maya's grandfather, Roberto, had been a Marine sniper in Vietnam. He was the one who taught her that shooting wasn't just about pulling a trigger. It was about understanding wind, breathing, heartbeat, and the subtle art of becoming one with your weapon. Under his patient guidance in the dusty fields behind their farmhouse, Maya had discovered she possessed something rare, an almost supernatural ability to place bullets exactly where she intended them to go. By the time she was 16, Maya was out shooting grown men at local competitions. Her high school rifle team coach called her a prodigy. College shooting scouts came calling. But Maya had different plans. The day after her 18th birthday, she walked into a Navy recruiting station and enlisted, driven by a desire to serve and to test her skills against the best the military had to offer. Her Navy career had been meteoric. After completing basic training and advancing through various marksmanship programs, she quickly became one of the youngest master shooting instructors in Navy history. She had trained thousands of sailors, breaking down the fundamentals of marksmanship into teachable components, while secretly knowing that what she possessed couldn't really be taught. It was something deeper, more instinctive. Now, standing at the gates of the most elite training facility in the American military, Maya wondered why she had been summoned here. Her orders were vague, mentioning only temporary marksmanship consultation and classified training evaluation. The phrase that stuck with her most was subject to immediate deployment based on performance assessment. The guard at the gate checked her identification twice before making a phone call. After several minutes of muffled conversation, he handed her a visitor's badge and pointed toward a cluster of buildings in the distance. "Building 164 is the third one on the left. Someone will meet you there." Maya shouldered her bag and began walking across the compound. The buildings here looked different from regular Navy installations. More utilitarian, more serious. Everything seemed designed for function over form. Men moved between buildings with quiet confidence, many sporting the distinctive trident pin of the Navy SEALs on their uniforms. As she approached Building 164, Maya noticed something that made her pause. Through the windows, she could see what appeared to be a classroom setting. But instead of the usual training materials, the walls were covered with detailed topographical maps, satellite imagery, and what looked like target analysis charts. This wasn't just any marksmanship facility. This was where the military's most elite snipers honed their deadly skills. The door to Building 164 opened before she could knock. A tall man with graying temples and intense blue eyes stepped out, wearing the uniform of a Navy SEAL commander. His name tape read, Mitchell, and his chest displayed ribbons Maya recognized as marking him as a combat veteran with multiple deployments. "Petty Officer Rodriguez?" His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to command. "Yes, Sir, Commander Mitchell. I'm the officer in charge of this particular training evolution. He studied her for a moment, his gaze taking in everything from her posture to the way she carried her equipment. I'll be honest with you, petty officer. When I requested a marksmanship instructor for this assignment, I wasn't expecting. He paused, choosing his words carefully. A woman, sir? Mitchell's expression remained neutral. I wasn't expecting someone from outside the special operations community. Your reputation precedes you. But this isn't the regular Navy. The men you'll be working with have been through some of the most demanding training in the world. They don't typically respond well to outsiders, especially those they perceive as being here to teach them something they believe they already know better than anyone else. Maya shifted her equipment case to her other hand. With respect, sir, I didn't request this assignment. I was ordered here. And I don't teach anyone anything they don't want to learn. For the first time, Mitchell's stern expression cracked slightly, revealing what might have been the beginning of a smile. Fair enough. Let me show you what you're walking into. He led her through the building, past classrooms filled with equipment she had only heard about in whispered conversations among military marksmen. Night vision scopes worth more than most people's cars. Rifles custom-built by the finest gunsmiths in the world. And ammunition specifically designed for precision beyond anything the regular military used. This facility trains snipers for the most demanding missions our country faces, Mitchell explained as they walked. The men here aren't just good shots. They're artists of precision. Some of them have confirmed kills at distances that would seem impossible to most marksmen. They stopped at a large window overlooking an indoor shooting range unlike anything Maya had ever seen. The targets weren't the standard paper circles she was accustomed to. Instead, they were sophisticated electronic displays that could simulate moving targets at various distances and under different lighting conditions. The technology was so advanced it seemed like something from a science fiction movie. The record here, Mitchell continued, for the qualification course we're about to begin has stood for 10 years. It was set by a SEAL who went on to become a legend in our community. Nobody has even come close to matching it since then. Maya watched as several men in desert camouflage uniforms fired at targets with methodical precision. Even from her vantage point, she could see their groupings were incredibly tight. The kind of accuracy that separated elite military marksmen from everyone else. Your job, Mitchell said, turning to face her directly, is to observe this training evolution and provide feedback on our instruction methods. You're not here to compete with these men, or to try to outshoot them. You're here as a professional observer. Nothing more. Something in his tone suggested there was more to the story, but Maya simply nodded. Understood. Sir. As they continued the tour, Maya became increasingly aware of the attention she was drawing. Conversations stopped when she passed groups of SEALs in the hallway. She caught fragments of whispered comments that ranged from curious to skeptical to openly dismissive. It was clear that her presence here was not only unexpected but unwelcome to many. The tour concluded in Commander Mitchell's office. A Spartan space decorated only with unit citations and photographs of SEAL teams in various operational environments. Mitchell gestured for Maya to take a seat across from his desk. Let me be completely straight with you, petty officer, he began, settling into his chair. This assignment came from very high up the chain of command. Someone with stars on their shoulders specifically requested you for this evaluation. I don't know why, and frankly, I don't particularly care. What I do care about is maintaining the standards and morale of this unit. He leaned forward, his intensity unmistakable. These men are the best at what they do. They've earned the right to be here, through more blood, sweat, and sacrifice than you can imagine. They don't need someone from the regular Navy coming in and telling them how to shoot. Are we clear on that? Maya met his gaze steadily. Crystal clear, sir. Good. You'll start tomorrow morning at 0500. The training evolution runs for 5 days. You'll observe, take notes, and submit a report on our methodology when it's complete. You'll be quartered in the transient barracks. Any questions? Just one, sir. What exactly is the record that stood for 10 years? Mitchell's expression grew distant, as if he were remembering something from long ago. A perfect score on our advanced sniper qualification course, achieved under the most demanding conditions we can create. The SEAL who said it went on to have a legendary career before leaving the service. In the decades since, we've had some of the finest marksmen in the world attempt to match it. None have even come close. As Maya left Commander Mitchell's office and made her way to the transient barracks, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more to her assignment than she had been told. The way Mitchell spoke about the record, the mysterious nature of her orders, and the obvious reluctance of everyone here to accept her presence, all pointed to something larger than a simple training evaluation. That evening, as she unpacked her gear in the small but functional barracks room, Maya reflected on the day's events. Tomorrow, she would begin observing the training that had produced some of America's most elite warriors. She was here as an outsider, unwelcome and underestimated. What none of them knew was that Maya Rodriguez had never encountered a shooting challenge she couldn't master. And despite Commander Mitchell's clear instructions that she was only here to observe, something deep inside her was already analyzing the range she had seen, calculating distances and wind patterns, and wondering exactly what it would take to break a 10-year-old record that everyone seemed to think was untouchable. The question that would keep her awake that night wasn't whether she could do it. It was whether she would have the chance to try. The alarm buzzed at 0430, but Maya was already awake. She had spent most of the night listening to the sounds of the base coming to life around her. The distant rumble of vehicles, the rhythmic footsteps of early morning PT formations, and the occasional sharp report of gunfire from the ranges that never seemed to completely quiet down. She dressed quickly in her Navy working uniform, making sure every detail was perfect. First impressions in elite military units were everything, and she knew that any sign of sloppiness would be seized upon by men looking for reasons to dismiss her. Her boots were polished to a mirror shine, her uniform pressed to razor-sharp creases, and her insignia positioned with mathematical precision. The mess hall was already busy when she arrived at 0445. SEALs filled the tables, their conversations a mixture of operational planning, good-natured ribbing, and the kind of dark humor that marked men who lived with danger as a constant companion. As Maya moved through the food line, she felt the weight of their attention like a physical presence. She chose a table in the corner, hoping to observe without drawing too much notice, but within minutes she found herself with company. A massive SEAL with sergeant stripes and a Texas drawl pulled out the chair across from her. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, though he was already settling into the seat. "Name's Jackson. Heard we got ourselves a shooting instructor visiting from the regular Navy." Maya looked up from her coffee. "Word travels fast around here." "Small community," Jackson replied with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Especially when something unusual happens. Can't say we get many visitors in our little corner of the world." Two other SEALs joined them without invitation. The first was younger, with the lean build of a distance runner and sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything around him. The second was older, probably in his late 30s, with the weathered look of someone who had spent years in harsh environments. "This is Martinez," Jackson said, indicating the younger man. "And Thompson." He gestured to the older SEAL. "We're all part of the sniper program you'll be observing." Maya nodded to each of them. "Looking forward to seeing what you guys can do." Martinez laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "What we can do? Lady, we've been doing this longer than you've been in the Navy. Some of us have been putting rounds downrange in places you've never heard of since before you picked up your first rifle. Is that so?" Maya kept her voice level, though she felt her grandfather's lessons about reading men echoing in her memory. These three were testing her, looking for weakness or arrogance they could exploit. Thompson leaned forward. "What Martinez is trying to say is that we're curious about what someone from the regular Navy thinks they can teach us about shooting. No offense, but the difference between what you do and what we do is like the difference between Little League and the major leagues." Maya took a sip of her coffee before responding. "I'm not here to teach anybody anything. I'm here to observe and learn." "Smart answer," Jackson said. "Because the course you're going to be watching isn't just about shooting. It's about precision under stress, making shots that matter when lives are on the line, and doing it all while carrying gear that weighs more than most people can lift." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a SEAL chief with graying hair and scars visible on his hands and forearms. The three men at Maya's table immediately straightened, their casual demeanor shifting to respectful attention. "Gentlemen," the chief said, his voice carrying the authority of years of leadership. "Time to get to work." As the SEALs stood to leave, Martinez turned back to Maya. "You might want to pay special attention today. We're starting with the precision stage of the qualification course. That's where most people wash out." An hour later, Maya found herself standing in an observation booth overlooking the most sophisticated shooting facility she had ever seen. The range stretched for over 1,000 yards, with targets positioned at various distances and elevations. Some targets were stationary. Others moved along computerized tracks that could simulate everything from a walking person to a vehicle traveling at highway speeds. Commander Mitchell joined her in the booth as the first group of SEALs began their preparations on the range below. Each man carried a rifle that had been custom-fitted to his specifications, along with ammunition hand-loaded for maximum accuracy. "What you're about to see," Mitchell explained, "is the most demanding marksmanship test in the American military. It combines extreme precision shooting with time pressure, physical stress, and environmental challenges that simulate real-world operational conditions." Maya watched as the SEALs below went through their pre-shooting rituals. Each man had his own routine. Some spent long minutes adjusting their scopes. Others checked wind indicators multiple times. And all of them seemed to enter an almost meditative state before taking their positions. "The record holder," Mitchell continued, "completed this course with a perfect score under conditions that haven't been matched since. Weather that day was challenging. Shifting winds, temperature changes that affected bullet trajectory, and pressure that would have broken lesser men." The first shooter took his position. Maya recognized him as Thompson, the older SEAL from breakfast. He settled behind his rifle with the fluid motion of someone who had done this thousands of times. The range fell silent, except for the distant sound of wind across the facility. The first target appeared at 300 yards, a standard bullseye target that would have been considered challenging at any civilian shooting competition. Thompson's breathing slowed, becoming almost imperceptible. When the shot came, it was a surprise even to Maya, who had been watching for it. The bullet struck dead center. "Good shot," she murmured. "That's the easy one," Mitchell replied. "Keep watching." The targets began appearing at increasingly challenging distances and angles. Thompson moved through them methodically, his rifle tracking smoothly from position to position. By the time he reached the 800-yard shots, Maya was beginning to understand why these men had such confidence in their abilities. Thompson was shooting groups that would have been considered impossible by most marksmen. But it was when the moving targets began that Maya truly understood the level of skill she was observing. Targets appeared for only seconds at various distances, requiring instant range estimation, wind calculation, and precise leading of the moving target. Thompson missed only 2 shots in the entire sequence. "Outstanding performance," Mitchell noted as Thompson completed his run. "That would have been good enough to set records in most military units. But not good enough to break the record here? Not even close. Watch the next shooter." Martinez was up next. The young SEAL's approach was different from Thompson's. More aggressive, faster between targets. His precision was remarkable, but Maya noticed he was rushing some of his shots. When the final score was tallied, he had outshot Thompson by 2 points, but was still far from the legendary score they kept referencing. Jackson's performance was similar. Exceptional by any normal standard, but still well short of the benchmark that had stood for a decade. "What made the record holder different?" Maya asked, as the morning session concluded. Mitchell was quiet for a long moment, his gaze focused on the range below where the SEALs were cleaning their weapons and discussing their performances. "Consistency under pressure," he finally said. The record wasn't set on a calm day with perfect conditions. It was during a week when everything went wrong. Equipment failures, weather changes, and personal stress that would have derailed most shooters. But he just kept shooting perfect groups, shot after shot, no matter what we threw at him. During the lunch break, Maya found herself walking around the base, trying to process what she had witnessed. The level of skill displayed by the SEALs was extraordinary. Yet everyone seemed convinced that the 10-year-old record was untouchable. She found herself wondering about the man who had set it. What kind of shooter, could consistently outperform men who were already among the world's elite. That afternoon brought the stress stage of the qualification course. Maya watched from the observation booth as each SEAL was required to complete a grueling physical challenge before shooting. They ran obstacle courses carrying full combat loads, then immediately had to engage targets at various distances while their hearts were still racing and their hands shaking from exertion. This was where the true separation occurred. Some of the men who had shot brilliantly in the morning struggled to maintain their precision while dealing with physical stress. Others adapted better, but all of them showed some degradation in their performance. This is where we lost most of the challengers over the years, Mitchell explained. It's one thing to shoot accurately when you're calm and prepared. It's entirely different to maintain that accuracy when you're exhausted, stressed, and operating under time pressure. Maya nodded, but privately she was analyzing every aspect of what she observed. Her grandfather had trained her differently than most marksmen. While others focused on perfect conditions and steady positions, he had made her shoot after running, during storms, and when she was tired or frustrated. Combat doesn't wait for perfect conditions, he used to say. The shot you need to make will come when you're least prepared for it. As the afternoon session concluded, Maya realized she was beginning to understand the challenge that had defeated so many elite marksmen. The course wasn't just about shooting accuracy. It was about maintaining impossible standards under constantly changing and increasingly difficult conditions. That evening, she returned to her quarters with a notebook full of observations and a mind full of questions. The SEALs she had met were undoubtedly skilled, but there was something in their approach that bothered her. They seemed to view the record as an impossible standard, something beyond human achievement. That kind of thinking, Maya knew from experience, could become a self-fulfilling prophecy. She spent the evening reviewing the range layout she had memorized during the day, calculating bullet trajectories and wind corrections for each shooting position. It was a mental exercise she had been doing since childhood, breaking down shooting problems into their component parts and solving them systematically. As she prepared for bed, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something important about her assignment. Commander Mitchell's reaction to her questions, the way the SEALs spoke about the record holder, and the mysterious nature of her orders all suggested there was more to this story than a simple training evaluation. Tomorrow would bring the long-range stage of the course, shots at distances that pushed both equipment and human skill to their absolute limits. Maya found herself looking forward to it with an anticipation that surprised her. Despite being here only as an observer, she couldn't help but mentally prepare for challenges she wasn't supposed to face. The last thing she remembered before falling asleep was her grandfather's voice from years ago. Maya, the difference between a good shooter and a great one isn't in their eyes or their hands. It's in their mind. Great shooters don't just hit targets. They see solutions where others see impossible problems. Tomorrow, she would see just how impossible the problems really were. The third day began with an announcement that changed everything. Commander Mitchell assembled all participants in the main briefing room, his expression more serious than Maya had seen since her arrival. The room filled with SEALs who had been performing at the top of their game, yet none had come close to threatening the mysterious record. "Gentlemen," Mitchell began, "we have a situation. Due to equipment failures and weather delays, we're behind schedule on this qualification cycle. We need to compress the remaining stages into the next 2 days." A murmur ran through the assembled SEALs. Maya could see the concern on their faces. Condensing the most challenging portions of the course would add even more pressure to an already demanding test. Additionally, Mitchell continued, we have orders to document every aspect of this training evolution for review by Special Operations Command. That means every shot, every technique, every training methodology will be recorded and analyzed. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just a routine qualification anymore. It was being scrutinized at the highest levels of the military. "Sir," Jackson raised his hand, "does this have anything to do with the rumors about budget cuts to the sniper program?" Mitchell's pause was answer enough. "Let's just say that the effectiveness of our training methods is under review. The results of this course will play a significant role in determining the future of this facility." After the briefing, Maya found herself walking to the range with a new understanding of why she had been brought here. This wasn't just about observing training methods. Someone wanted an outside expert to evaluate whether the SEAL's reputation for marksmanship excellence was justified. The long-range stage took place on a different part of the facility, where targets were positioned at distances that seemed almost theoretical. The closest targets were at 800 yards, with others extending out to 1,200 yards and beyond. At these distances, factors that were minor annoyances at shorter ranges became major variables that could throw shots completely off target. Maya watched from the observation tower as the SEALs prepared their equipment. Each rifle had been zeroed specifically for long-range work, and the ammunition was precision-loaded to tolerances that commercial shooters could only dream of. The scopes alone cost more than most people's annual salaries. These distances are where natural talent separates from learned skill, Mitchell explained as they watched the first shooter take position. At 1,200 yards, you're not just fighting the target. You're fighting physics, atmospheric conditions, and the limitations of your equipment. The first shooter was Martinez, the young SEAL who had shown such promise in the earlier stages. Maya watched him settle behind his rifle, his movements deliberate and controlled. Through high-powered spotting scopes, she could see him making minute adjustments to his position and scope settings. The first shot at 800 yards struck within the scoring ring, but not with the precision Maya had expected based on his earlier performance. The second shot was worse, and by the time Martinez reached the 1,000-yard targets, his groups were opening up significantly. "What's happening?" Maya asked. "Classic case of trying too hard," Mitchell replied. "Martinez knows he's being watched and evaluated. That pressure is affecting his shooting. Watch how tense his position is compared to yesterday." Maya could see it now. The slight tremor in Martinez's hands, the way he was holding his breath too long before each shot, the overcorrection when he missed. He was thinking too much, trying to force precision instead of letting it happen naturally. Thompson's performance was more controlled but still fell short of the standards he had set in the earlier stages. Jackson, despite his obvious experience and natural ability, struggled even more with the extreme distances. As the morning progressed, Maya began to see a pattern. Each SEAL was skilled enough to make shots that would be considered miraculous by civilian standards, but all of them were fighting the same internal battle: the pressure of knowing they were being measured against a legendary standard. During the lunch break, Maya overheard a conversation between two SEALs that confirmed her growing suspicions about the true nature of her assignment. "Did you hear what Chief Ramirez said?" one of them whispered. "SOC is looking for excuses to cut funding. They think we're overpaid prima donnas who can't deliver results that justify the expense. That's why they brought the regular Navy instructor," his companion replied. "They want to see if some petty officer can do what we do. If she can, then they'll argue that we don't need specialized training." Maya felt a chill as the pieces fell into place. She wasn't here just to observe. She was here as a potential replacement. Someone in the chain of command was questioning whether the elite SEAL sniper program was worth its enormous cost. If a regular Navy marksmanship instructor could match their performance, it would provide ammunition for those who wanted to scale back or eliminate the program entirely. The realization changed everything. The SEALs' initial hostility now made perfect sense. They weren't just protecting their egos. They were protecting their careers and the future of a program they had dedicated their lives to. That afternoon brought an unexpected development. As Maya was returning from lunch, she was intercepted by Chief Ramirez, the senior enlisted advisor for the sniper program. His expression was grim as he guided her toward a small office away from the main training areas. "Petty Officer Rodriguez," he began, once they were alone, "I'm going to speak plainly, because time is short. Your real mission here isn't what Commander Mitchell told you." Maya had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed still sent a shock through her system. "You're here because some brass in Washington think they can prove our program is unnecessary," Ramirez continued. "They want to see if a regular Navy instructor can achieve results comparable to what we produce. If you can, they'll use it to justify massive cuts to special operations training budgets." "Chief, I had no idea." "I know you didn't. That's why I'm telling you now. Tomorrow's final stage will include an attempt at the full record course. The plan is to have you shoot it, supposedly to evaluate our training methods from an instructor's perspective. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. I'm not qualified for your course. I don't have the equipment. The specific training, you'll have access to everything our shooters use, the same rifles, ammunition, and support equipment. And based on your reputation, you probably are qualified, whether you know it or not. Ramirez leaned forward, his intensity unmistakable. Here's what you need to understand. If you attempt that record and fail badly, it validates our program's value. But if you get close, or God forbid actually threaten the record, these men's careers are over. The program that's produced some of America's finest warriors will be dismantled. The weight of the situation settled on Maya's shoulders like a physical burden. She had been placed in an impossible position through no choice of her own. Fail deliberately, and she would be compromising her own integrity and military oath. Succeed, and she would be destroying the careers of genuinely skilled professionals who had done nothing wrong. What would you do, Chief? Ramirez was quiet for a long moment. I'd shoot to the best of my ability and let the chips fall where they may. These men are warriors, not politicians. They understand that sometimes you face missions you can't win. And sometimes, the best thing you can do is show everyone what you're really made of. That evening, Maya found herself alone on the range as the sun set over the Pacific. She had permission to familiarize herself with the equipment she would be using the next day. The same precision rifles and hand-loaded ammunition that represented the pinnacle of military marksmanship technology. The rifle felt different from anything she had ever handled. Heavier, more substantial, with a custom trigger that broke like glass and a scope that revealed details at distant targets that seemed impossible. As she dry-fired the weapon, practicing her trigger control and breathing, Maya began to understand why the SEAL's equipment was so expensive. This wasn't just a rifle. It was a precision instrument engineered to perform at levels that pushed the boundaries of what was physically possible. As she practiced, Maya became aware that she wasn't alone. Looking around, she saw several SEALs watching her from various positions around the range. They weren't trying to hide their presence. They were openly evaluating her, trying to gauge what kind of threat she might represent to their world. Thompson approached first, his earlier hostility replaced by what appeared to be genuine curiosity. Mind if I ask you something? He said. Maya lowered the rifle. Shoot. Where did you learn to handle equipment like that? Most regular Navy folks have never even seen a rifle like what you're holding. 1. My grandfather taught me on an old bolt action when I was a kid. The fundamentals don't really change, regardless of how sophisticated the equipment gets. Thompson nodded slowly. What's your longest successful shot? In competition or in training? Either. Maya hesitated. The answer would reveal more about her capabilities than she was sure she wanted to share. 1,400 yards. Prairie dog hunting in Montana during leave 2 years ago. Thompson's eyebrows rose. That's serious distance. What were you using? Borrowed rifle, hand loads. I worked up myself. Took me most of the day to get the ballistics figured out. Martinez and Jackson had joined them, drawn by the conversation. Maya could see them exchanging glances as they processed what she had just revealed. 1,400 yards is further than some of our qualification targets, Martinez said quietly. Different conditions, different pressures, Maya replied. Taking a shot when you have all day to prepare is completely different from what you guys do here. Maybe, Jackson said, but the fundamentals are the same, like you said. Wind reading, bullet drop, trigger control. Those don't change whether you're hunting prairie dogs or qualifying for special operations. As the SEALs drifted away, Maya realized that something fundamental had shifted in their attitude toward her. The open hostility was gone, replaced by a wary respect. They were beginning to see her not just as an outsider sent to judge them, but as a genuine shooter who might actually understand the challenges they faced. That realization brought both relief and additional pressure. Tomorrow, she would face the most demanding marksmanship test in the American military, with the careers of skilled professionals hanging in the balance. The question was no longer whether she was capable of threatening the 10-year record. It was whether she could live with the consequences if she did. As Maya returned the rifle to its storage case and prepared to leave the range, she found herself thinking about her grandfather's lessons again. He had always taught her that the most important shots weren't the ones you made in practice. They were the ones that mattered, when everything was on the line, and failure wasn't just about missing a target. Tomorrow would be that kind of shot, magnified beyond anything she had ever experienced. And for the first time since arriving at the SEAL facility, Maya began to wonder if she was ready for what she was about to face. The morning of the final day arrived with an unusual stillness. Maya woke before her alarm, her mind already racing through the ballistic calculations and environmental factors that would affect the day's shooting. Outside her window, she could see that the flags on the base were hanging limp. No wind, which could be either a blessing or a complication depending on how conditions changed throughout the day. The mess hall was quieter than usual when she arrived for breakfast. The SEALs, who had been so vocal in their opinions over the past few days, now sat in small groups, speaking in hushed tones. Maya could feel their eyes tracking her movement as she moved through the food line. But there was something different about their attention now. The hostility had been replaced by a tension that felt almost electric. Commander Mitchell approached her table as she was finishing her coffee. His expression was unreadable, but Maya could see the stress lines around his eyes that hadn't been there when she first arrived. "Ready for today?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her. "As ready as I can be, sir." Mitchell nodded slowly. "I want you to understand something before we begin. What happens today will be documented and reported all the way up to the Pentagon. There will be observers from Special Operations Command, and every shot will be recorded and analyzed." Maya felt her stomach tighten. "Sir, I want to be clear about something. I never asked for this assignment, and I had no knowledge of the political implications when I accepted it. I know. And I want you to know that regardless of what happens today, you've conducted yourself professionally throughout this evolution. The men respect that, even if they don't appreciate the circumstances that brought you here." As they walked to the range together, Mitchell continued his briefing. "The record course consists of 50 shots from 10 different positions, at ranges from 300 to 1,400 yards. You'll have access to the same equipment, ammunition, and support that was available to the record holder. The same weather monitoring, wind flags, and spotting assistance. They arrived at the range to find it transformed from previous days. Observation towers had been erected at multiple points, filled with military personnel Maya didn't recognize. High-definition cameras were positioned to record every angle, and the entire facility buzzed with the energy of a major event. Chief Ramirez met them at the equipment station, where the precision rifle Maya had practiced with the evening before was waiting along with 50 rounds of hand-loaded ammunition. Each cartridge had been individually measured and tested for consistency, representing the pinnacle of ammunition technology. "Weather conditions are about as good as we could hope for," Ramirez reported. "Temperature is stable, humidity is low, and wind is minimal and consistent. If you're going to make a run at this record, today's the day for it." Maya picked up the rifle, feeling its familiar weight and balance. The scope had been adjusted to her eye relief and shooting position, and the trigger had been set to her preferred weight. Every detail had been optimized to remove variables and equipment limitations from the equation. "One thing I want to tell you," Ramirez added quietly. "The record holder used this same rifle. It's been maintained in perfect condition since then, but it hasn't been fired in anger since that day 10 years ago. Maybe it's superstition, but some of the men think the rifle remembers what it's capable of." The first position was at 300 yards, considered a warm-up shot by SEAL standards. Maya settled behind the rifle, running through the pre-shot routine that had become automatic after years of training. Breathing, natural point of aim, trigger control, follow-through. The fundamentals her grandfather had drilled into her since childhood. The first shot surprised her with its precision. The bullet struck exactly where she had aimed, producing a hole in the target that would have been considered exceptional at any civilian competition. Through the spotting scope, she could see the SEALs exchanging glances. The second shot was equally precise, as was the third. By the time she completed the 300-yard stage with 5 perfect hits, Maya realized that something special was happening. The rifle, ammunition, and conditions were combining to produce a level of precision she had never experienced before. Outstanding shooting, Mitchell's voice came through her headphones. Move to position 2 when ready. Position 2 was at 500 yards, with targets that appeared smaller and more challenging. Maya adjusted her scope and settled into the new firing position. The fundamentals remained the same, but now she had to account for increased bullet drop and more precise wind reading. Her first shot at 500 yards was slightly off-center, still within the scoring ring, but not with the precision of her 300-yard performance. Maya made a tiny adjustment to her aim point and fired again. Perfect center hit. As she worked through the 500-yard targets, Maya became aware of the absolute silence that had fallen over the range. Even the observers in the towers had stopped their conversations. Everyone was watching what was beginning to look like something extraordinary. The 800-yard position brought new challenges. At this distance, the targets appeared as small dots even through the powerful scope, and environmental factors that had been minor at shorter ranges now became significant variables. Maya spent extra time reading the wind flags and calculating her adjustments. Her first shot at 800 yards was a hit, but barely. Maya realized she had been thinking too much, trying to calculate every variable instead of trusting her instincts. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. Don't think your way into a miss. Trust what you know, and let it happen. The next 4 shots were increasingly precise as Maya found her rhythm. By the end of the 800-yard stage, she was shooting groups that would have been competitive with the best the SEALs had produced during the week. Remarkable performance. Mitchell's voice carried a note of amazement. Current score puts you well ahead of any challenger we've seen in years. As Maya moved to the 1,000-yard position, she became aware that word of her performance had spread throughout the base. Personnel who had no official business at the range were gathering at observation points, drawn by reports that someone was actually threatening the untouchable record. The 1,000-yard position was where most challengers began to struggle significantly. The targets were so small that precise aim was nearly impossible, requiring shooters to rely on carefully calculated holdover points and minute adjustments for wind and atmospheric conditions. Maya settled behind the rifle and began her target analysis. The wind flags showed a slight but consistent breeze from the left, requiring a small windage adjustment. The range card indicated a specific point of aim to compensate for bullet drop at this distance. Her first shot at 1,000 yards was perfect, a center hit that drew audible exclamations from the observers. The second was equally precise. By the time she completed the 1,000-yard stage, Maya realized that she wasn't just shooting well. She was shooting at a level that surprised even her. This is unprecedented, she heard someone say over the radio. She's actually on pace to break the record. The 1,200-yard position represented the beginning of truly extreme long-range shooting. At this distance, Maya was operating at the very limits of her equipment's capability and her own experience. The targets were so small that she had to trust her scope adjustments and aim points, rather than trying to see precise bullet impacts. As she prepared for her first shot at 1,200 yards, Maya felt a calm settle over her that she had only experienced a few times in her life. It was the same feeling she'd had during her best competitions, when everything seemed to slow down, and every variable fell into perfect alignment. The shot broke cleanly, and through the spotting scope, she could see the bullet impact exactly where she had intended. The observers erupted in excited chatter, but Maya was already preparing for the next shot, lost in the rhythm of precision shooting at its highest level. 4 more perfect hits at 1,200 yards, and Maya was approaching territory that no one had expected anyone to reach. The record that had stood for 10 years was no longer untouchable. It was within reach. Final position, Mitchell announced over the radio. 1,400 yards. This is where legends are made or broken. The 1,400-yard position was unlike anything Maya had ever attempted in competition. The targets were barely visible even through her scope, appearing as tiny dots that seemed to shimmer in the heat waves rising from the desert floor. At this distance, A slight error in wind reading or bullet drop calculation would result in a complete miss. Maya took her time analyzing the conditions. Wind flags at various distances showed subtle differences in wind direction and velocity. Temperature had increased slightly since the beginning of the course, affecting bullet velocity and trajectory. Even the rotation of the Earth became a factor at these extreme distances. Her first shot at 1,400 yards was slightly high, still a hit, but not with the precision she had maintained throughout the course. Maya made a tiny adjustment to her scope and settled in for the second shot. The rifle seemed to disappear in her hands as she entered the shooting trance that marked her best performances. Breathing slowed, heartbeat steadied, and every variable in the complex equation of extreme long-range shooting aligned in her mind. The shot broke perfectly, and through the spotting scope, Maya could see the bullet impact dead center in the target. The observers fell completely silent, realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. 3 more shots at 1,400 yards, each one placed with surgical precision. As Maya fired her final round of the course, she knew without waiting for the official score that something historic had just occurred. The rifle that hadn't achieved perfection in 10 years had just done so again, in the hands of someone who wasn't supposed to be capable of such a feat. The silence that followed her last shot seemed to stretch forever. Then, slowly, applause began to build from the observation areas. It wasn't the polite clapping of a formal ceremony. It was the genuine appreciation of professionals who had just witnessed excellence at its highest level. Commander Mitchell's voice came over the radio, carrying a mixture of amazement and something that might have been pride. Petty Officer Rodriguez, you have just shot a perfect score on the Advanced SEAL Sniper Qualification course. Not only did you break the 10-year standing record, you equaled it. 50 shots, 50 hits, under conditions identical to those faced by the previous record holder. As the implications of what had just happened began to sink in, Maya realized that her achievement had changed everything. The questions about the value of elite sniper training wouldn't be answered by proving that regular Navy personnel could match SEAL performance. They had been rendered irrelevant by a demonstration that excellence transcends organizational boundaries. The SEALs who had viewed her with suspicion and hostility were now approaching with genuine respect. They understood that what they had just witnessed wasn't a fluke or a lucky day. It was the product of natural talent, years of dedicated training, and an approach to marksmanship that complemented rather than competed with their own. As Maya unloaded the rifle that had just made history twice, she found herself thinking about her grandfather and the lessons he had taught her about shooting and life. He had always said that the most important victories weren't the ones you won against others. They were the ones you won against your own limitations. Today, she had discovered that her limitations were further away than she had ever imagined. The hours following Maya's record-tying performance passed in a blur of debriefings, documentation, and congratulations from personnel she had never met. Officers from Special Operations Command who had flown in specifically to observe the training evolution found themselves scrambling to revise their assessments and recommendations. The political mission that had brought Maya to Coronado had backfired completely, producing results that validated rather than undermined the elite sniper program. In the immediate aftermath of her final shot, Maya found herself surrounded by the same SEALs who had viewed her arrival with such suspicion. But their attitudes had undergone a complete transformation. Thompson was the first to approach, extending his hand with genuine respect. "That was some of the finest shooting I've ever witnessed," he said simply. "I owe you an apology for the way I treated you when you first arrived." Martinez and Jackson followed suit, their earlier hostility replaced by the kind of professional admiration that elite performers reserve for their peers. They understood that what they had witnessed wasn't just exceptional marksmanship. It was a demonstration of the mindset and skills that separated good shooters from legendary ones. "I have to ask," Martinez said, "where did you really learn to shoot like that? Because what we just saw isn't something you pick up in regular Navy training." Maya found herself smiling for the first time since arriving at the base. "My grandfather used to say that shooting isn't about the gun or the target. It's about understanding yourself and trusting what you know. Everything else is just details." Chief Ramirez appeared at her side, his weathered face showing a mixture of pride and amazement. "In 30 years of military service, I've seen maybe a handful of performances that belonged in the same conversation with what you just did. The record you tied has been the gold standard for precision shooting in the special operations community for a decade. As they walked back toward the main facility, Ramirez continued his explanation. The man who set that record went on to have a legendary career. Some of his missions are still classified, but what I can tell you is that he saved American lives in situations where one shot meant the difference between success and disaster. He set the standard not just for accuracy, but for performing under the kind of pressure that would break most people. The mention of the original record holder reminded Maya that she still had many questions about the mysterious figure whose achievement had defined excellence for so long. What happened to him? Is he still in the service? Ramirez exchanged a glance with Commander Mitchell, who had joined their group. There was clearly more to the story than they were sharing. He left the Navy about 5 years ago, Mitchell said carefully, decided he'd had enough of military life and wanted to pursue other opportunities. But his legacy lives on in the standards he set and the men he trained before departing. That evening, Maya found herself in Commander Mitchell's office for what she assumed would be a final debrief before her return to her regular duty station. But Mitchell's opening comments suggested that her assignment at Coronado was far from over. Petty Officer Rodriguez, he began, settling behind his desk with a thick folder of documents. Your performance today has created some interesting complications. Maya felt a familiar knot forming in her stomach. Complications, sir? The officers from Special Operations Command who observed your shooting have spent the afternoon making phone calls to Washington. Your demonstration has completely upended their assessment of this facility and our training programs. Mitchell opened the folder and reviewed several documents before continuing. Instead of finding justification for budget cuts, they've witnessed evidence that our training methods can produce results that exceed even our own expectations. Your achievement validates everything we've been trying to prove about the value of precision marksmanship training. Sir, I'm not sure I understand the implications. The implications, Mitchell said with a slight smile, are that you've become something of a problem for people who were hoping to reach different conclusions. There's now significant interest in understanding exactly how someone with your background was able to achieve what our most elite operators haven't been able to match. Maya shifted uncomfortably in her chair. I'm just a regular Navy marksmanship instructor, sir. I don't have any special training or capabilities that aren't available to anyone else. That's exactly what makes your performance so remarkable, Mitchell replied. And it's why I've received orders to extend your assignment here indefinitely. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She had been prepared to return to her regular duties, not to remain in the spotlight of the elite special operations community. Your new assignment, Mitchell continued, is to work with our training cadre to analyze and document the techniques and methods that enabled your success. Command wants to understand whether your approach can be integrated into our existing curriculum to improve overall program effectiveness. Over the next several weeks, Maya found herself in the unusual position of teaching elite military marksman techniques that she had learned from her grandfather on a farm in rural Texas. The SEALs who had initially resented her presence became eager students, recognizing that her approach offered insights they hadn't previously considered. Her methods were deceptively simple but profoundly effective. Where the SEALs had been trained to rely heavily on technology and calculated precision, Maya emphasized intuitive shooting and the development of natural shooting ability. She taught them to trust their instincts, to read environmental conditions through feel rather than instruments, and to maintain precision under stress by embracing rather than fighting the pressure. The difference, she explained during one training session, is between trying to control every variable and learning to work with variables you can't control. Perfect conditions don't exist in the real world, so training for perfect conditions creates artificial limitations. Thompson, who had become one of her most dedicated students, raised his hand during the discussion. But how do you maintain precision when you can't control the variables? Our training has always focused on eliminating uncertainties. You don't eliminate uncertainties, Maya replied. You become comfortable with them. When you stop fighting the wind and start working with it. When you stop trying to force perfect position and start shooting from whatever position you have, that's when you discover what you're really capable of. The transformation in the SEALs' shooting performance was remarkable. Within weeks, several of them were achieving scores that approached Maya's record-tying performance. More importantly, their shooting under stress improved dramatically as they learned to trust their trained instincts rather than overthinking every shot. Chief Ramirez observed these improvements with amazement. In 30 years, I've never seen changes this dramatic in such a short time. You've given these men permission to shoot the way they're actually capable of shooting. But Maya's greatest discovery came not from teaching others, but from learning more about the man whose record she had equaled. During a conversation with a SEAL instructor who had known the original record holder, Maya began to understand the true significance of her achievement. Rodriguez, the instructor said, was more than just a great shot. He understood that precision shooting isn't really about hitting targets. It's about having the capability to succeed when success seems impossible. That mindset, that refusal to accept limitations, that's what made him legendary. The instructor paused, studying Maya with an expression she couldn't quite read. What you did that day, tying his record, wasn't just about marksmanship. You demonstrated the same mindset, the same refusal to be limited by other people's expectations. As Maya's extended assignment at Coronado continued, she began to realize that her arrival there hadn't been the accident she had originally believed. The orders that brought her to the SEAL facility, the mysterious nature of her assignment, and the political pressures surrounding the sniper program had all combined to create a moment where excellence could emerge. She also began to understand that the original record holder's departure from the Navy might not have been as simple as wanting to pursue other opportunities. During a conversation with Commander Mitchell, she learned that Rodriguez had left the service shortly after a classified mission that had gone wrong, resulting in the loss of teammates he had been unable to save despite his extraordinary skills. Sometimes, Mitchell explained, even perfection isn't enough. Rodriguez learned that lesson in the hardest way possible, and it changed him. He realized that being the best shot in the world doesn't guarantee you can save everyone you care about. The revelation gave Maya new perspective on the record she had tied and the legacy she was now part of. Excellence in marksmanship wasn't an end in itself. It was a tool that enabled service to others, sometimes under circumstances where the stakes couldn't be higher. As her time at Coronado stretched into months, Maya discovered that her achievement on the range had opened doors she had never imagined. Opportunities for advanced training, assignments to elite units, and career paths that seemed impossible for someone from her background were suddenly within reach. But perhaps more importantly, she had learned something fundamental about the nature of excellence itself. The record she had tied wasn't just about hitting targets at extreme distances. It was about refusing to accept limitations, pushing beyond what seemed possible, and maintaining precision when precision mattered most. The day finally came when Maya received orders for her next assignment, a posting to an elite unit where her skills would be put to use in operational environments. As she prepared to leave Coronado, she realized that her time there had changed not just her career trajectory, but her understanding of what she was capable of achieving. Chief Ramirez met her at the airfield as she prepared to depart. "You know," he said, "in all the years that record stood, I don't think anyone really believed it would ever be equaled. Rodriguez set a standard that seemed untouchable." "Maybe that was the problem," Maya replied, shouldering her gear bag. "Maybe everyone was so focused on how impossible it was that they forgot to focus on how to make it possible." As her flight departed Coronado, Maya looked down at the shooting ranges where she had discovered capabilities she hadn't known she possessed. The 10-year record that had defined excellence for an entire generation of elite marksmen was no longer untouchable. It had been equaled by someone who wasn't supposed to be capable of such a feat. But more than that, the methods and mindset that enabled her success were now being passed on to others, creating a new generation of marksmen who understood that excellence wasn't about equipment or conditions. It was about refusing to accept limitations and trusting in abilities that went deeper than techniques or technology. The question that had brought her to Coronado, "Can I take a shot?" had been answered in ways no one had anticipated. Maya Rodriguez had proven that she could not only take the shot, but that she could redefine what was possible for everyone who came after her. In doing so, she had earned her place among the legends of military marksmanship, not as someone who broke a record, but as someone who proved that records exist to be equaled by those brave enough to believe they can achieve the impossible.